by Robert Swindells. Daily Routine Orders 13.
You mustn't think I've been idle. Just because Link the Stink continues to evade me, a peek under the famous floorboards is all you'd need to convince you of my continuing determination to rid my country of the riffraff that's dragging it down. My tally of recruits now stands at 7. 7? Oh, I know I went on a bit when we reached 3, and 3 is a significant number, but 7. 7's what you'd call a mystical number. The reason being one that need not detain us. All I know is lots of things go in 7s, like the 7 deadly sins, and the 7th son of a 7th son, not to mention the days of the week, and the magnificent 7. I got a black one, which goes to show there's no racial discrimination in the Camden horizontals. It also helps break up the pattern, the deadly pattern I mentioned earlier. You can just imagine it, can't you? Some smart-ass detective constable looking for a pattern, saying, all his victims have been white. That could be significant. Well, it ain't. So there. There is no pattern, except that each operation has been a textbook example of brilliance, and they'll never see that. They've bags of swank, my lads. Shiny boots and nice short hair. And if you think the boots'll give me away, if you're thinking the fella I get 'em off must be starting to wonder, forget it. I don't go to one fella, I go to 3. So far. And there'll be more yet, by golly there will. You don't catch old Shelter that easily. So, the business continues. Volunteers swell the ranks, and they are volunteers, you know. Nobody forces them to come. They come for what recruits have always come for. An end to hunger and a roof over their heads, and they get it. None of my lads is hungry, and they've got a roof over their heads, and a floor as well. I sometimes think I spoil 'em.
Where was I? Oh, yes, spring, and the real world. It was magic being with Gail. Like I said, I seemed to stop noticing the cold, and tapping became a sort of game for us, a contest to see who could score most. It wasn't heavy, I don't mean that, it was a light-hearted game. I never minded when Gail won, which she often did. Mind you, the situation had its drawbacks. For a start, I got jealous of Gail, possessive, I suppose. I hated letting her out of my sight. She was so good-looking, I was terrified some guy had come along, someone with a job and a car and a place to live, maybe, and snatch her away. Well, it'd be no contest, would it? And that was the other drawback. I started wanting work so I could offer her a home. I'd always wanted a job, of course, but now it became a longing, almost an obsession. Worst thing was, I knew it was a non-starter. Nobody was going to give me a chance the way I look now, but didn't stop me wanting, or trying. I really did try too. I haunted the job centre, wrote letters on nicked paper, bought stamps I couldn't afford. I even had a couple of interviews, but I never got a result. They know, you see. If you have to give some job club as a return address, they know you've nowhere to live. They know you haven't worked in a long time, maybe never. And they don't want to know. They've so many applicants to choose from, why should they take on a dosser? I wouldn't, if I was in their shoes. It was torture too, because every time I went chasing after a prospect, it meant leaving her behind, and all the time I was gone I'd be worrying. Maybe that's one reason I never got anything. They could tell I hadn't brought my brain with me. Anyway, April came along, my situation hadn't changed, and Gail was still with me, which astonished me when I allowed myself to think about it. She didn't seem to mind that I had nothing to offer. I put it down to love. One Saturday, it was a warm sunny day. We were sitting on the towpath opposite Pullet, the local night spot, enjoying the sunshine, when a middle-aged guy came up to us. "Excuse me," he said. "I wonder if you can help me." I thought he must have been lost or something, but then he said, "I'm trying to trace my daughter, and I wondered if you might have seen her. Her name's Tanya. This is her." He held out a snapshot. Gail took it, shook her head and passed it to me. It was Toyah. I nodded. "I've seen her a couple of times." "Where?" The guy practically jumped down my throat. "Where'd you see her? When?" I nodded towards the lock. "There, the market. Not for a while, though.
Did you talk to her? Did she say where she was living, or anything like that?
I shook my head. She was dossing, I think. I don't know where she hangs out.
Was she with anyone? An older man, perhaps?
No. Once she was with 2 young guys, the other time she was alone. I looked at him. Why would she be with an older man? He shook his head. When he spoke, I could tell he was trying to keep from crying.
I don't know. I spoke to a man last night, a man in a watchman's hut. He told me he might have seen my daughter about a week ago, going into the ground floor flat of the house he lives in, with the man who has the flat, a man in his 40s.
Did he give you the address? Have you tried there? I knew his informant must be Captain Hook. He nodded.
I went there last night. I rang the bell, but there was nobody in.
The guy in the watchman's hut, does he know this man?
No, he's not been there long, apparently.
Have you tried the police?
No, I tried them months ago when Tanya left home. They didn't want to know. She's 17, you see. Free to go where she chooses.
He stifled a sob.
It's breaking our mother's heart.
Poor sods, I thought. They drive their kid out, probably without meaning to, then think tramping round London with a snapshot will get her back. It won't, but I wish someone cared about me like that. Look, I said. We'll look out for your daughter, and if we see her, we'll say we saw you. Get her to phone home, okay? He was so grateful he practically hugged me.
Bless you,
he says, shoving a $5 in my unresisting hand.
Bless you both.
He shambled off, clutching his snapshot and his useless hope. Gail and I watched him go, each pretending not to notice how close the other was to tears.